You know, we took a significant number of cuts in the 09-11 budget, which I voted for. There were approximately $5 billion worth of cuts. So there were some significant cuts there. So I won't go into that, but yes, I am not averse to cuts. I understand it's a matter of choices given limited revenue priorities. If you're asking about what types of areas can we look at going forward, I was willing to visit the whole issue of, for instance, the General Assistance Unemployable Cash Assistance Program. Eliminating those payments while still retaining health care coverage would have resulted in about $50 million in savings. I'm also willing to look at some tax preferences that don't directly benefit state residents. For instance, the ones I supported were removing the tax break for coal for the TransAlta plant, which was granted in exchange for keeping 600 coal miners employed in Centralia. Those coal miners have since been laid off. It's now owned by a Canadian company. I think we have to be willing to look at tax preferences and say, if the deal is not kept up by the other side, then we have the right to revisit those. And I am very much against open-ended tax preferences. Another one might be, for instance, the tax break on the sale of wind power to out-of-state companies, not in-state, but out-of-state companies. There are a number of areas, too, that I think the state auditor has pointed out that need to be looked at. The state has a lot of lease space presently in its portfolio. I think in this market you could look at some significant reductions if you go out and renegotiate those and perhaps more appropriately space state operations. I think there's a tremendous opportunity to look at service delivery and particularly the management structure within state government. We have a very top-heavy structure which does not reflect the approach being used by the private sector, which has relatively flat structures. Tremendous growth within the management system, CMS positions in this state that I think we need to take a hard look at. These are not people that deliver services on the front line, and I think by restructuring state government we can address those things. So I think there's a whole raft of areas, and quite frankly, I really wish we had undertaken that evaluation and made some of those calls before we moved to propose a tax package, which of course I voted against, but it made it much easier to take that vote because I think in good faith we did not attempt to look at where there were additional savings in the budget.
Well, what we need to do is go to a priorities of government approach, whereby we look at how much revenue we're going to have, we take a small margin underneath that, and we prioritize the core functions of government, which are public education, public transport, and public safety. So we look at prioritizing on those. But more generally than that, what we need to do in this state is get the state out of some of the cost-consuming businesses that it doesn't need to be in. So what we would cut is we need to get the state out of the liquor business, we need to get the state out of running a printing press, and we need to get the state focused on the core competencies of government in a prioritized sense.
Is that enough to balance the budget, or are there other specific things?
Well, again, we're going to go to the priority. We need to go to a priorities of government approach and fundamentally look at how much money we have, take a small margin under that, and say this is our priorities, and this is what we're going to spend on.
So
and that's
what
it.
would fall at the bottom of your priority list?
Department of Tourism, in this sense, this year, and that's why, it's unfortunate the governor and our current leadership haven't taken kind of some bold steps to restructure things in this state, because they've talked about across-the-board cuts, and across-the-board cuts cut everything equally. When we want to try and protect, the most needy and some of those folks, that it's really essentially that we not cut them and cut things like, running tourism marketing for Seattle at this time.
So the tourism office, the state tourism office, you think that could be cut?
Well, no,
eliminated, or?
Well, again, we need to go to the revenue projection, say how much money we have, and prioritize on education, on transport, and public safety. And when we have prioritized with over how much money we have, then we look at the bottom of the priorities and we say those aren't getting funded.